So you go over when you take photography, probably a lot more of fine tuning adjustments when you're taking photographs and when you bring them into Photoshop. But for the purposes of us working in our posters, we might pull down an image from a stock photo site, or maybe we took an image ourselves, and we need to tweak it a little bit to make it workable in our poster. So I just want to go over kind of my top couple go-to adjustments that I make inside of images when I'm working in Photoshop. So this is kind of a down and dirty, these are like my top tips. So the first of these comes from actually inside image adjustments. And so my top two go-tos are going to be looking at my levels, which is basically using brightness and contrast, but you can really fine tune it, which is great. And it's not quite as hard to get a hold of as, say, curves are. So it's a nice middle ground where we can fine tune things, but it's not kind of so hard to wrap our brains around. And then the other thing that I'm going to have us look at is color balance. And those two will be able to take an image that's as kind of washed out and blue as this guy here and make it into something that you might actually want to show. So this is an image I took out of an airplane of some glaciers, but because of the light, because of the how far up we are, and because actually outside light's kind of blue, it doesn't look great. So how am I going to make this actually look like it did when I looked out of the window of the airplane and thought, oh my god, that's awesome looking? So let's go up, and the first thing I'm going to adjust are these levels. So like I said, this is kind of like a fine-tuned brightness and contrast. So one of the things that I like to make sure of is that I've got preview checked, that way when I make changes, I can see what they look like in my image here. Now, the way that this is laid out is basically this sky all the way to the left changes where the black level comes in. So this changes, it makes it darker when I pull this in, makes the blacks blacker. This sky all the way over on the right makes the whites whiter. And this is your middle gray. So if I move it towards the blacks, then that means that the grays are going to get blacker. If I move it towards the white, the grays are going to get whiter. So the first thing I'm looking at is I'm seeing I'm not getting a lot of contrast, but while I don't have a lot of contrast, I do have some very bright whites, and my blacks look super blue. So I think what I want to do is I'm going to pull my black in first. So I'm going to start pulling that in, and as I let go, I can start to see it affecting my output. And maybe that's a little bit further than I want. That looks a bit funny with the blues. Okay, I'm happy with that. Maybe I can kind of also get a sense of where I might want to bring these levels in based on this little graph here. So again, like I don't have a lot going on right here. And based on that, I can kind of see, well, maybe I can actually scoot in my white a little bit more. Just getting that popping a little bit without it looking like super washed out. Well, that's kind of good, but it's still super blue and kind of weird. Now, as this is a JPEG that I took that was kind of for screen, so it's red, green, blue color, I can actually play with each of these channels individually. Now normally, and again, the easiest thing to do is just play with the whole thing. But this is super blue. So I'm gonna actually play a little bit with just how the blue comes in, because if I look at each of these channels on its own, so this is combined. Red, very much over here. But like, look at how stacked blue is. And green kind of falls somewhere in between. So let's just mess with this blue a little bit. Okay, let's see. Ooh, that's maybe, again, too much. It's looking kind of green and weird. Now that's starting to look a little bit like an actual mountaintop. And starting to kind of get, wow, these glaciers are in fact blue. They're not maybe as blue as it was looking before. Now, I've got this gray here. Starts, and it's basically where our blacks start to come in. So I'm going to pull this so it's a little bit more in the middle. That's maybe too much. Again, a lot of this is just kind of eyeballing where it starts to look funny or where you don't like it and kind of messing with it back and forth. So like, that's too much, that's too green, that's still too blue. I'd say that's just right. We're doing a little bit of the Three Little Bears. Goldilocks and Three Bears. So it's a little bit too green still, so I'm just going to go to green. And I want to mess with this a little bit too. What happens if I go, whoa, that's the wrong way. Oh, that's starting to look a little bit better. And again, I'm just going to uncheck preview. That's what I started with. So that's starting to look like an actual, like, the Earth. Okay. Maybe I can get it a little bit better before I go into my color modes. Okay. I'm liking how it's looking like in here. That's actually looking like the, like Earth that's coming out. I can see the kind of dirt that's running through the glaciers here. That's still nice and white. You're still getting some weirdness out in here, but it's certainly looking a sight better than it did when it was really washed out there. And it's not, you're still getting that weird blue in here, but it's starting to look better. Okay, so like past 1, I'm happy with that. And if we go back here, we can see and kind of see how this has changed overall from where it was at the beginning. But I'm happy with that, so I'm going to click OK to have that apply. So that's certainly a lot better than it was, but I think I can do better still. So I'm going to go up to image, and I want to adjust my color balance. So as you can see in color balance, what this lets me do is it lets me adjust the shadows, the color of the shadows, so like how this is really weird blue, separately from the color of the highlights. And then again, the midtones, your grays, you can adjust separately as well. So, for example, I'm kind of happy with how the highlights are looking. I think the whites look pretty white, and I do kind of want a little bit of a blue cast because it's a glacier. It is actually blue. But these shadows, they should not be blue. This is not an impressionist painting. So this allows me to play with the color balance, and it shows me the two colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel. And so as I pull these in opposite directions, it balances it out. So the first thing I want to play with is down here, my yellow and blue, because I know this is too blue for my shadows. Okay, that's too green. So you can see if I pull it far, you get really weird results, and it also looks really like it's very strange looking. But, all right, let's pull it back. Let's just do a little bit. And again, I can change my preview on and off so that that's before, this is after. Okay, it's getting a little, it's better. Maybe a little bit more. Before, after. Okay. Well, I know I want to then play with my green because I definitely want it to be yellower, but it's still too green. Oh, that's starting to look a lot better already. Yeah, no, that's moving in the right direction. Those especially, I'm looking up here in this neck of the woods at the shadows up here. And again, it's starting to look more like land and less like some kind of weird blue sea. Let's maybe get rid of some of that cyan a little bit. Yeah, that's starting to look better. I like that. And again, I can kind of pull it back and see, no, definitely better. Okay, I'm happy with that. Now let's see. All right, so that's affecting the shadows. What about the midtones? Because I'm noticing there's some areas that still aren't really changing. So let's go to the midtones and see what we can do in there to make it better. Again, let's go ahead and change this guy. Ooh, because that's a little too yellow. Yeah, that's getting better. All right, let's add a little bit of magenta in. Oh, yeah, that looks nice. So, all right, that's come a long way from there to there. Okay, I don't want to mess with it too much more than this because we're starting to kind of get some kind of weirdness happening in here. So, like, you want to change things, maybe not so much. But if I go into, so you can see your history. This shows you what the actions you've taken. So when I opened it, it looked like that. When I adjusted the levels, we got here, but it still looked kind of blue and green. And now with color balance, it actually looks like you still get some color distortion from the kind of looking out when you're looking through the atmosphere. But this is starting to look like an actual mountain range where you actually can get some glaciers happening. You can kind of see we've got glaciers and these kind of ice flows, and that actually looks like the ground. So I think that's pretty good to start off with. Now I've got another demo image you can play with on your own to try to see about kind of balancing it out, but hopefully that gives you some sense of how much you can do with just those two tools, your levels and your color balance.